So when you travel, do you bring your laptop computer with you? What about your iPod? Well, if copyright industries have their way, they'd be able to search those digital devices just to make sure you're not carrying anything that infringes on copyright laws. Joining us to shed some light on this is Dr. Michael Geist, law professor at the University of Ottawa. Hey there, Dr. Geist. We're talking about possible provisions of ACTA, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement. And you've done some extensive research on issues of technology and the law. I want to know what you're hearing about this.
Well, ACTA is something that a number of countries, Europe, the United States, Japan, Korea, Canada, and several others have been negotiating for the last couple of years. And a lot of it's been happening in secret. In fact, even as some governments say that it ought to be open and the text ought to be released so that people can have a sense of what's at stake, there are a number of governments, including the U.S. government, that has been insisting that it remain secret. The one thing that hasn't worked to those who want to keep the secret, though, is that what we found is that there are leaks. And so just this past week, the text itself, the entire text, though not necessarily fully up to date, but one that's quite recent, leaked on the internet, disclosing really what the plans are. And I think they cause considerable concern for people in all of the ACTA-related countries.
And I want to talk about some of these people that are concerned. Certainly red flags being raised in the civil liberties community. But let's be honest, many of the people worried here are the nearly 35 million people who have pirated material off the internet. You know, what's the answer to deal with them?
I'm not so sure that that's the case. I think when you take a look at some of the kinds of provisions that they're dealing with, whether it's on-border measures that you alluded to off the top, whether it's the locking down of content that people have legally purchased and then says that they can't, for example, make a backup copy of a DVD that they've purchased or a CD that's got copy controls. If they want to put it onto their iPod, that becomes illegal. Or even the prospect of kicking people off the internet based solely on allegations, a proposal that is put forward in the draft text as an example of how internet service providers might address concerns of infringement on their network. I think this goes well beyond the people that are engaged in infringement and frankly has the potential to impact every internet user.
And I want to kind of play off that point. I mean, you've talked about the laws in terms of copying DVDs. There are also laws against unnecessarily searching your personal goods. But others that say if it's a commercial good, it's allowed to be searched. And computers are often considered to be commercial goods because, well, business is conducted on them. I want to get your legal take on this. You know, you talked about the legality of copying the technology, but what about the legality of people's rights?
Yeah, no, that raises a big issue. And when word first started leaking out about the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, one of the concerns that was raised, in fact, was I think the most immediate concern, was this prospect of iPod searching border guards, this idea that you could have border guards who would be empowered to search personal computers or iPods. And I actually think that was a pretty aggressive reading of the text and the leaks that we've seen thus far. Frankly, I'm not convinced that that's the intention of those that are negotiating this. And in fact, it's caused such a hullabaloo, it's caused such concern that several of the participating countries have put forward exemptions to try to assuage some of these concerns around the prospect of iPod searching border guards. But the kind of language that we've seen proposed, whether from the Europeans, from the Canadians, from a number of other countries, does seek to make this distinction between commercial and non-commercial. And a number of people have noted that in the past, border guards often treat things like personal computers as commercial for search purposes. And if that's in fact the case, and this will depend from country to country, the exemption doesn't really have its intended effect. There is still that possibility of individual searches, even though there is this exemption that's being considered.
Certainly an interesting time, Dr. Geist, having all these freedoms that people have and then having to sort of rein them in. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.